Um, Welcome everybody to Austin Design Week 2020. We are so glad that you guys are all here joining us on Wednesday. My name is Jessica Sager and I am on the Austin Design Week team this year. Remember, you can connect with us and share your experiences over the week by tagging us on social media. Please, please, please tag us. You can go to the next slide. If you haven't already, we encourage you to please join our Slack workspace. Please check the Zoom chat, which is where we'll be putting that link and several other resources for you. We encourage you to continue the conversation on our Zoom Slack. Remember, all the events this week are free and we want you to come check them out. So check out the schedule and join us for more. Next slide. And then lastly, we really want to say a huge thank you to our incredible, generous sponsors that are making this year happen. And finally, at the end of this event, you'll be asked to take a brief survey on this event, and we'd really love to hear from you. So thank you all for being here. I'd now like to pass this event over to our amazing moderator and host, Mindy Cooper, to get this event started. Thank you, Mindy.
No problem. Thank you. We're so excited to be here. I'm actually a part of a three-legged team this morning, and I'm going to have Daniel Woodruff, who is president and founder of DWG, lead us off. So Daniel, if you want to take the mic.
Yeah, thank you. We are so thrilled and excited to be here today. Austin Design Week has been something that we've been participating since its inception, and so it's really special to have seen this event grow in prominence and exposure. And yeah, today we really just wanted to talk about a project that's become very near and dear to our hearts about continuing to transform the urban landscape and talk about, as landscape architects and urban designers, how we go about that process and tell a little story that we hope sparks things in your minds about how we collaborate better, how we interact as designers and professions, and how we see the built environment around us. This is a project that was Red Leaf Development was our client in association with ACC, Austin Community College. And just very quickly wanted to introduce the three of us. We maybe should have done this without our names on the bottom and then have a polling of who's who, but too late now. But going from right to left, because I like to do things in a backwards way sometimes. Lauren Mcgee is one of the other co-panelists on this presentation, and she was the project manager for this project, and she's been with DWG for since 2016, and was really critical to the process of navigating the management and implementation of Fontaine and subsequently St. John's Commons Encampment. And we were expressly told that we had to make sure that that everyone was appropriately stimulated, engaged, and entertained as part of this presentation. So hopefully your coffee and taco deliveries arrived to all participants. They were promised, but also Lauren's favorite word is moose tracks, and I'm going to leave it at that. Mindy, really excited to be sitting here with Mindy today as well, and she's one of our principals at DWG, and has very much been our guiding star in terms of strategic development and the cadence and the way that we grow culturally and kind of spiritually as a group of individuals, and has really helped guide us through transformational projects like this. And I'm not entirely sure what it means, but Mindy told me that her favorite word was guibo.
Least favorite word currently.
Least favorite. Oh my God. All right. Least favorite. Sorry.
There will be a quiz at the end, everyone.
There will be. And last but not least, I'm Daniel, obviously Daniel Woodruff, and I am the newest intern at DWG, and joking aside, design director and president DWG. And really my role on the project is all about stirring the conversation and exploring the relationships between landscape and architecture and infrastructure, and engaging conversations with our clients and consultants about really promoting socially, environmentally, and economically equitable and resilient places that amplify great change. And I very much like to live by the words of good trouble. So with that, I'll just kind of hand off to Mindy in terms of talking a little bit about us and our approach.
Sure. And I just wanted to insert this slide here and say, beyond the three of us here today, we have an amazing team of designers, landscape architects, urban planners, just a wonderful group that it would be erroneous of us to sit here and pretend like we did this work on our own. There's an amazing amount of support with this team. So just want to make sure that we give some acknowledgement of that group that we're so proud to be a part of. So I'm just going to kick off and touch back on what Daniel said. So I do lead the strategic development efforts here at DWG, and just wanted to share with you all, our approach here at DWG is really centered on this commonly held vision for the future. And that is of a world where creativity will lead great social and environmental change. We really believe that our mission is to be a group of creatives that's designing experiences through resilient architectural landscapes. And we've taken big steps in trying to achieve those goals on projects like 111 Congress, where we transformed a depressed plaza. I mean, you may call it depressed, you may call it depressing, whichever way you want to look at it. We transformed that into a vibrant social space for eating, playing, escaping the city. We've thought outside of the bounds of typical permitting and ownership limitations to introduce things like pocket patios to Austin, reclaiming public space for people from all walks of life instead of just parking spaces that serve just a select few. We've designed experiences on both the ground floor and up in the sky, as evidenced here on a project called 44 East in the Rainey District. And we've sought the highest level of sustainability in all that we do, as evidenced in our commitment to 100% auxiliary water use and innovative soil science towards the goal of carbon neutrality, as seen here in our Parmer campus project. So this session is going to tell yet another remarkable story about transformation and how a highly collaborative partnership has moved the needle one step closer to achieving our vision for the future of great social and environmental change in our city. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm getting distracted by the Zoom haircut that I'm getting. I spent hours curling my hair this morning, and
we believe you.
Staying focused on this. Every great story, every great transformation starts with a sense of place, a sense of history, and this project is no different in that. For us, Fontaine Plaza and St. John's tell a really remarkable story, a story of individuals like Jacob Fontaine, and the story of the St. John's Encampment Commons. It was really about understanding and working with leadership in the community and of the African American Black community here in Austin, about understanding the purpose of Fontaine and of this place in its history, about education and raising up and leadership, and even the advocating and petitioning to enable the University of Texas to be established in Austin. And throughout that conversation about understanding the relevance of history and individuals, having the ability to use the landscape and the college, the community college, as a way to return that conversation back to the importance of people coming together, of gathering, of equity and of education, and really about celebrating and learning. And so for us, it was really, really important. But that was almost kind of the first chapter, and the chapter that we engaged in was when this site, Highland, was a mall, and was a mall in the 1970s. You go to the next slide, Mindy. Yeah, there we go. And it was very much celebrated as the most significant regional shopping mall, and was a paradigm shift for Austin. Perhaps today not the paradigm shift we were looking to aspire today. It was certainly all parking lot and no parks. And one of the things that's really remarkable for us is that Highland has become this national model for a P3 partnership about education, anchored with sustainable, adaptive, and community-minded use. And go to the next slide. Here you see the extent of the mall. It's almost 80 acres of concrete and asphalt. And the next slide again. So a number of years ago, Red Leaf Properties led the effort to form a public-private partnership with the Austin Community College to acquire and redevelop this property. And the literal sense of transformation of taking a now defunct mall that had closed and reinvigorating the entire 80 acres of this 1970s era shopping mall into an innovative learning center and transforming the surrounding parking lots into a really social and equitable mixed use urban project that has a combination of signature parks and trails, and today is quickly becoming one of the premier destinations to work, educate, recreate, and explore. But it's also really importantly home to Austin Community College's largest campus. And it's rapidly emerging as this kind of really profound model of diversity and social and equity, and a place to work and educate, recreate. So for us to be participating in a small part about the landscape transformation was really, really special. So I'll hand off to Lauren now just to go into a little bit more detail about the how and the why.
Sure. So the overall project massing and orientation is an example of a true mixed use development, as you can see here. And thank you, Mindy. The two signature gateway parks are strategically located at the ends of a green spine that bisects the centrally located ACC campus, Fontaine Plaza on the west, and St. John's Encampment Commons on the east. Together, they serve as anchoring points for the campus and are also major moments along the linear hike and bike trail that encompasses the entire campus. Fontaine Plaza is a 1-acre park that aligns with the original mall entry drive and will in time be in alignment with the future relocated Red Line station. I'll hand it back over to Daniel.
Thank you. So as designers, and I think I see through the people sitting on this panel today, there is a huge importance on this process of storytelling and about really doing our due diligence to understand the cadence of the project, not just the project boundaries of what the client has kind of dictated and mandated through a project brief, but understanding the sense of place, the sense of purpose and time and storytelling that occurs. And for us, we believe very strongly that a project should start with a very kind of clear thesis. And that thesis for Fontaine Plaza was very much inspired by Austin Community College's own kind of guiding North Star about the community college district will be recognized as the preferred gateway to higher education and training, as a catalyst for social equity, economic development, and personal enrichment. And that sense of being a catalyst, about change, about the sense of equity and making something that was formerly a place just for cars and now a place for people really was important for us, and allowed us to start to consider what are the things we really need to celebrate or understand. And that starts with analysis. And that analysis really looked at, again, that sense of, as Lauren had stated, the parking lot to park, the sense of the former road into the mall now being this potential for a park. And one of the major kind of assets that we had was a sense of existing trees. We developed a very clear program that looked at understanding that green spine. And through that, in terms of working with Redleaf and with McCann Adams and also with the adjacent design teams of TBG Partners and Lake Flato and a host of other, Coleman and the architects for Highland ACC itself, this really kind of collaborative process of understanding how we can kind of build this thing up. And we often start in an analog formation about really understanding the sense of movement and flow and gathering and that sense of how we can not only connect edges, but also create these kind of inspiring moments at a variety of scales that help to kind of weave a story, a thread through this process. But that process is not a singular, it's very much a kind of a linear and iterative process of testing and retesting. And so it starts with analog sketches. It starts with understanding the limitations or requirements of preserving and enhancing the trees and considering them a vital infrastructure. And then as we kind of move through the design and kind of start to develop digital massing models, so we move from kind of a plan view indication and diagrams about form and space into more of the three-dimensional, even four-dimensional in terms of how we imagine ourselves being in these spaces. And it allowed us to quantify and develop metrics about this project having a profound impact on impervious cover and about impacting the environment larger than just this project, with by deducting the road and deducting the parking lot, seeing up to an 85% reduction in impervious cover. And as a result of the additive process of landscape and lawns and preserving those trees, the site now effectively becomes a sponge and is able to intercept and filter almost 500,000 gallons of water a year that would otherwise have just flown downstream into the storm drains. And so as a design challenge, it was also about not just understanding how to save the trees, but how to promote as a baseline that the sense of sustainability, the sense of sustainable sites is very attainable not as a mandate, but as a baseline expectation of what a really great project could be, and doing that in a way that actually demonstrated to the client that it didn't cost any more. And so we were very thoughtful of that. And part of that really thoughtful process was actually blurring the line between what is the conventional role of a landscape architect. And contrary to some people's thoughts, it's not just about the shrubbery. As urban designers, and I didn't even get a crack of a smile from Lauren or Mindy when I said that. I thought I was going to get like a virtual slap. But there is a sense of, as urban designers and as landscape architects, and we have, I mean, even trained architects and designers on staff, that there is a sense of having the opportunity, as we did here, to look at signage and wayfinding and branding as part of that landscape composition, and to then overlay a sense of landscape as art, about placemaking, and about a sense of how to be unconventional with the sense of arrival recognition. And very easily, ACC actually wanted to put a big monumental blade sign on Airport Boulevard and said, we want a giant ACC logo. And we challenged that and said, would you entertain a more artful solution that looked at lighting as a really evocative tool? And so that actually worked. And we developed a concept called Thicket that actually took an abstract of the ACC logo being the river bat, and imagined not an abstract of a bat itself, but actually bats with movement, bats in terms of the cadence of day and night, and a sense of day and night, the sense of embracing change and extending the life of this space for people and making it a really engaging and evocative space that changes throughout time of day, time of year. And that's where this sense of digital modeling allowed us to really look at creating an image that was really unique and really special. And we worked with Ion Art to prototype and come up with this. And we've been very blessed that this project has now progressed. So Lauren.
Yes, we would love to take you on a virtual tour of the construction, and this is happening. And so in this photo, it's from early on in the project, and they're working on fine grading, but also in the back, I'm not sure if you can quite see it, but there's actually demolition going on of that mall entry sign. And what we are looking at now will eventually become the view of the lawn. So here, permeable pavers have been installed, and they're starting to install the reclaimed steel benches, which are made from salvaged beams of the old mall. And we actually selectively tagged the beams to be used for these benches, just adjacent at an adjacent site. In the background is where a deck will be installed later on in the photos. And something that was really important was working around the root zones and making sure that those footings were outside the half critical root zone for the tree's health. Here in this photo, all of those little like silver pipes that are sticking up, those are actually the footings for the art installation. There are 73 poles that are part of this art piece, and they all range from the art piece themselves from 3 feet to 20 feet. So some of these footings had to be pretty substantial. This is a photo that is starting, the project is starting to come together. The walkways are in place. The reclaimed steel benches have been completed, as well as the custom picnic tables that you can see off to the left. Something that is still under construction is to the right. So that's one of the decks. The framing is still being worked on in this photo. And then time for the plants. I feel like this is always one of my favorite times to be on site. It's when everything really starts to come together, and it's always great to have that fresh color of green come through after, you know, days on end of seeing just dirt out there. So it's really exciting. And we used all native and adaptive plants for this project to emphasize that low impact design that Daniel had mentioned previously.
I'll jump in and send a shout out to our contractor on the project. You can see their vehicle in the background. Strata Landscape did a wonderful job out here.
They did. Now for the art piece. So this was so exciting. We worked very closely with the clients, Redleaf and ACC, and also shout out to Ion Art to actually craft these 73 poles. I mean, from the fine tuning of the pole color to the type of coating that was actually on the light piece to the light temperature itself to make sure we had that perfect glow, even down to the placement of the set screws, everything was carefully curated. And here is a photo of the art piece actually installed. I think this was just right after they installed it. So it was really, really exciting to, you know, see this vision come to life.
Yeah, so thank you, Lauren, for walking us through some of those progress shots. And like Lauren said, I mean, there's nothing like seeing something like this come together, and then we get these just gorgeous brand new grand opening shots. So I'm going to take you through some images that we took earlier this summer, right around the time that the park was wrapping up, and of course we were gearing up for a in-person grand opening, and that isn't quite how it went down. We did have a virtual grand opening early this summer. The park is open, so you're welcome to drive by and visit anytime that you'd like. So in this photograph, you can see, and I'll point out on the left-hand side, there's a decomposed granite strip that you can see the fire hydrant sort of at the edge of. That is there for a reason. So the decomposed granite strip there is actually allowing for fire lane access. So instead of having a really wide asphalt roadway there, we're able to use some of our site, kind of disguising that requirement inside of the greenscape. You can also get a really good shot here of that lovely central lawn. So this isn't just sod that's installed on top of dirt. It's much more complex than that. This is a multi-layered system that's set up specifically to handle really large crowds and heavy use. And here's another angle of that. And you can sort of see the edges of this park. While we have this really wide open gathering space, we also have a couple little nooks that are carved out on the side for active edges. So it's possible to go gather even safely. You can see in this photograph, we're pretty comfortably having a conversation off to the side, and many groups of people we've watched out there. There are two apartment buildings nearby, and folks are just loving this green space for their pets and picnic lunches and all sorts of things happening. You get a sense here for how that art piece that Lauren was talking about is really folded into the landscape. And right now, these plants are just babies, so they haven't quite filled out. But at some point, this is all going to become a carpet of just really lush green with these light poles sort of popping up out of. And as you can see, so this has really become not just an art piece, but also a branding and wayfinding piece for ACC. So thinking about that nod to the bats in flight, it really communicates itself at nighttime when it's all lit up. And you can see here from this aerial, just the overall, it's for me, the amazing thing is thinking of this image as what it once was when I used to go to Highland Mall to go to Dillard's or wherever, and thinking about driving in that entryway, and to see it now just transformed into this amazing place that's for people, that it represents a bolstered ecological system. We're able now to sort of unfold a story that had been covered over by pavement for so many decades, and seeing all those things come together is just phenomenal. I also want to touch back to, here's one more shot at nighttime, just so you can get a sense. There's no way for us in photograph form to really communicate what this looks like when it's glittering at nighttime. So I would say if you have the opportunity to go by, please do. So just to kind of summarize the transformation of this park, and also highlight, as we wrap this up, one of the things that we have been just so astounded by, Daniel had touched on the 3D modeling tools that we use when we're trying to communicate our vision to a client. And so this is one of the renderings that we had shared with the client team when we were first trying to describe the project to them. And they were fully on board, loved the modeling tool. And at the end of it, when we were able to get some photographs of the actual thing, one of the most rewarding comments that we received was that, wow, the actual thing looks better than the model. So, even in our perfect world in the computer, what actually got built is 10 times, I think, what we would have anticipated from just the drawings and vision alone. Our socks have been completely knocked off, I suppose. And the really great news is that with Fontaine Plaza complete, we've now been invited to join ACC and Red Leaf in looking at St. John's Encampment Commons, which was that eastern punctuation to the green spine that Lauren had described earlier. So we'll take a couple of minutes here just to give you a brief overview. That project is not quite as far along as Fontaine is, so we'll give you a little insight into what's happening over there and what the plan is for St. John's.
Thanks, Mindy. As she had mentioned, this is at the other end of the green spine. St. John's Encampment Commons serves as that gateway from the east and is located next to the new City of Austin Development Assistance Center. This park is a 2.4 acre flagship of open space for ACC and Highland. And what once was a parking lot in front of the old Macy's building large, very large parking lot has been shaped by a poetic vision, as you see here, that sustainably transforms the site. And drawing on inspiration from the site's legacy as a place for gathering, the design provides areas for events and meetings, both small and large. As you can see, it was envisioned to be a place to gather together, and ACC's this park as an amenity, not only for the college, but also for the community, to be a social hub where people can gather together and celebrate. Seating areas are tucked under groves of trees to provide refuge and respite on hot Texas days. And there's an ample amount of flexible open space to accommodate a variety of programming and the daily cadence of life within the Highland community. There's a large emphasis placed on sustainability with low impact design, innovative water quality solutions, and reduced impervious cover. And actually this park will take off 1.2 million gallons of water that will stay here instead of being diverted into stormwater. So that's really great. And there are beautiful heritage trees that were also on the site that needed to be emphasized and are really key features of the park now. And it's a place where, you know, convocations and graduations can eventually take place. And, you know, here's maybe a night that a big event could occur. And, you know, it's just, it would be so great to have everybody come together again, hopefully after COVID's over, and just celebrate the history of the site while looking forward to a bright future.
Yeah, Lauren, maybe we should have re-rendered that shot to show park space circles and an appropriate kind of distancing. But yeah, I mean, for us, this project has been a really remarkable transformation, and one that has been a really fun process of developing friendships and relationships, about understanding the history and importance of this site and of the real meaning of transformation. And when we started all of this, not in a million years could we have imagined the importance of what open space, public open space, is starting to play in our urban environments with COVID, in terms of social distancing, in terms of access to nature, and just simply access to green, the ability to have a design that is really flexible and transformative and adaptable and nimble. But when we kind of thread this timeline of design, about it starts with a sketch or a conversation, and the fact that we were able to physically prototype custom light fixtures and work with fabricators and geek out about set screws and colors and powder coats, and then expand that conversation from Fontaine to St. John's about building on that legacy of open space, and how the trail system and the linear parks and the paseos really change that cadence of what this project represents, and how it can become an ongoing raising of the bar of what our built environments should really aspire to be. And we always like to kind of close out with some stories and reminders about just metrics and simple things that hopefully stick in your mind about that can change. And Fontaine Plaza, only an acre, or I say only an acre, just over an acre of space. There's a lot kind of really technical stuff packed into it. There was a very rigid budget, and I wanted to just say that in terms of a photo can tell a million words, but we didn't have an endless budget here. We had to be very, very creative with understanding if we were going to spend money on the lights. We had to look at this and that and find a sense of balance. But within that balance, there is that kind of fundamental commitment to innovation, sustainability, about reducing intercepting and reducing the amount of water that flows off-site and goes across the streets and into the lake and causes downstream flooding. About preserving and enhancing those heritage trees so that they not just look good now, but they survive and sustain and flourish in the future. And when you reduce impervious cover and you remove that environment that was formerly just for ingress and egress of cars, and you create a space that is at least for 250 people, safely spaced, you really see the kind of the profound transformation of what it is to live adjacent to these, to go to college and study in this park. And that story just gets better and better with St. John's Encampment Commons being 2.4 acres and that sense of 1.2 millions of gallons of water being intercepted and held on site and used to water the plants. On top of ACC themselves having a 1 million gallon system for rainwater just across the street, which we're using for all the irrigation in this park. And further transforming and preserving trees and that close to 90% reduction of impervious cover. And so that space that was relegated for 300 cars, maybe on that kind of Black Friday shopping day when the mall was full, to 1,500 people comfortably using the park and enjoying it. And what could be better when you're now picking up your permit from the DAC across the street to come over and just hang out and chill out in the park under the canopies and everything. So none of this would have been possible, as Mindy said earlier, without the entire team from DWG behind us. This was a huge, huge lift, but it was also a huge lift from ACC and from Redleaf and Brian and Matt and the sense of trust and relationship that we forged in this project. And then the consultant team, and from the civil engineers with WGI and Stantec, the MEP consultant with Bay and Associates, and of course, Strata, the landscape contractor who pulled off a miracle to transform our vision into reality and do it in true style. And that true style being amplified by the really fun process of working with Ion Art and getting to imagine a custom light installation that challenged the role of art. And so hopefully this panel has elicited a thought-provoking sense of how we perceive our open space and what it can be when we get into a little bit of good trouble and challenge the norm and change the expectation of what it is to be equitable and resilient within the urban environment. So thank you all for listening to this. And I've been following the chat, and there's a few questions.
There's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, there's a few in the Q&A questions, and then we can try to catch up on the chat too. But do you want to try to, there's only 4 questions here that I can see, so maybe we should work our way through these and then
go for it.
To chat. So the question came up, what tools do you use to create your drawings? And I know, Daniel, you spoke to the use of pencils. So I wonder, Lauren, do you want to field what computer programs went into the creation of these?
Sure. So those beautiful renders that you saw for both projects, those started out in SketchUp, and then we took them into Lumion, where we're able to really dial in to the specific plants that we choose to place in there. And you can even do like fly through movies to actually be able to make you become a part of the park, which was great. We found it very helpful for when we were presenting to our clients, and they could actually, believe that they're there in the park.
Perfect. We had that question twice, so I'm going to skip the other one. And a question came up from Andres. He asked, the original project, was it initially an open competition? Daniel, do you want to?
Yeah, we competed for the project. It was actually an invite, and there was a selection of firms from the region that were asked to not just present a proposal, but present kind of a design thesis or a project approach to how we might come up with a solution. And so that was a really engaging and very unique way to elicit a creative solution and for the owners to start to establish relationship. And so it was really fun. So it was kind of a sort of open competition, and very, very excited that we were placed in that shortlist to begin with, and then we're blessed to be selected.
Awesome. I know I saw a question come up in the chat box about permitting. Trying to find it now. There are a few here. So Janice had asked, what were your biggest permitting challenges? And so we've now been through permitting, or we're mostly through permitting on St. John's, not quite there yet, but there have been a couple of things that have come up along the way. And I can think of two-part answers to that question. Lauren, I'm curious to hear how you might respond to that, at least for Fontaine specifically.
Well, with Fontaine, I think of the decks and how those were permitted. I think that took a lot longer to get through to the city. I think that they were maybe confused on what we were actually putting out there, because there were a lot of hoops that we had to jump through to get those decks finally permitted. Like we actually had to go through kind of the same permitting that a building would typically go through. So, you know, it was a little overwhelming at times, but we got through it.
Yeah, and it's important to say that there was within the right of way, because there are streets, there's usually license agreements and permits, and then in this instance there were almost kind of building permits. And so often when you are pushing the envelope, as we were in terms of decks and light poles and transforming a site this much, I think it was there was an acknowledgement that this was going to be a challenging process. But when you're then looking at the overall project and the agreements that the ownership has about the amount of dedicated open space and specific percentage points, there was a lot of very specific kind of minutiae elements to resolve. And so it really took a team effort of us and the engineers and the owners to collaborate with the city to enable these to become a reality.
Awesome. I'm not sure, Lauren, you might know the answer to this question off the top of your head. Sherry had asked for the address. And so we are on Airport Boulevard, just north of Koenig. I'm not certain, through the permitting process, Lauren may have the address number memorized. So I'm going to ask her. If not, we can follow up.
For St. John's, that is 6100 and 18. It's a funny address, but I feel like if you were to Google the ACC Highland campus, then that would put you right at the center, and from there you would probably pass at least Fontaine Plaza, I think, on Airport Boulevard. So
yeah, right. So you'll find Fontaine Plaza right off of Airport Boulevard, and it's not far from the current Red Line station. So the plans that we talked about a little bit during the presentation, that Red Line station is slated to move directly across from Fontaine Plaza, and then St. John's Encampment Commons is directly behind ACC Highland Campus's main building. So you could orient yourself that way. Oh, Sherry, way to go. Thank you. Chatted the address. Much appreciated. We also got a question about budget restrictions and if they affected any of our decisions at all. And I think, as we all know here, budget restrictions almost always come into play in our projects. So Daniel, I don't know if that's one that you want to field on either St. John's or Fontaine, just kind of what were the highlights of things that came up that we made some modifications to address budget concerns.
Yeah, I mean, but budget is a reality, and in fact, something that we actually consider a vital part of a design tool. It should never really be considered a hindrance, because going into these projects, it was explicit that we understood what the budgets were and then worked closely with the clients and the contractors, even from conceptual sketches, to understand order of magnitude pricing, and then have it repeated multiple times to make sure we're on track. value engineering is a reality, and when we're looking at using reclaimed steel and custom elements and how they're stored and what the real cost is, and the custom detailing for the decks and what that meant in terms of use of steel versus wood and for the framing and the costs there. We really wanted to make the central promenade walk very special, and so that used a custom blend of concrete and a particular kind of pigment that matches all the way through the green spine, through the ACC buildings itself. And so it really became important for us to give as much information early to the contractor. And I think the last kind of really big kind of challenging thing was the custom art installation, the thicket, in terms of we're building something that's never been done before, and looking at DMX lighting and controllers and set screws and powder coating, and how do we give Ion Art enough information to really give an accurate guaranteed maximum price. And so that was a very fluid, and it had to be a very collaborative process. But I will say, I mean, you know, we definitely had to tighten the screws and trim some things, but I think with an approach of looking at budget as a holistic thing that is part of a design process, we didn't get to that kind of a crap moment of now we've got to cut 50% of the project. I mean, it's been really, you know, cost of steel has gone up, or the cost of, you know, this has gone up, or labor has increased, and things that are just realities that we now have to deal with. And fingers crossed, I mean, we're inches away from having the permit done on St. John's and scheduled to start construction on that project this year, and for it to run through the spring of next year. And so, you know, that's locked and loaded for another remarkable transformation.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It does seem like the project is certainly no lesser for any kind of budget concerns that were addressed. The vision really became a reality, and we were able to do cost savings as needed, and that vision was not impacted by budget concerns, thankfully. I do want to touch on, we have we have several other questions. I'm trying to dart between chat and the Q&A box. Someone asked, how did you engage with the local community to make sure the project served their needs? And Daniel, I know you've been involved in a lot of coordination with ACC and some of our partners. And I think that's probably one that you might want to be best to speak to.
I mean, there have been a few moments in my life where we've been involved in community engagement meetings where people have been brought to tears. And there was a moment with Pastor Clark, who's the reverend of the Baptist Church, and the reverend that is tasked with still leading the St. John's kind of tabernacle and the events within the Black Baptist Church community. And we had a moment of talking to him and listening about the history and the stories, and just hearing some of the engaging kind of feedback that we got, and the sense of real acceptance and appreciation for wanting to tell the story and doing it in a very thoughtful way that didn't create a historical landscape, but created something that was about bringing people forward and looking to the future and looking about this kind of more, you know, social and equitable environment. That Dr. Malcolm and Dr. Rhodes at ACC have been huge stalwarts of leading that kind of community process for ACC, and then the work that Brian and Matt have done at Redleaf. And you know, we were brought on board late in the process. The master plan was already established by McCann Adams, and there was a lot of kind of moving parts, but it really has been remarkable how we've been able to engage with the community at large, and kind of touch on the key aspects of what we were trying to achieve of landscape, and at the same time tell these really rich stories that are important to celebrate.
Thank you. That's awesome. It's been a really unique process, and we're obviously really grateful that we had so many phenomenal community leaders involved in this. It's not necessarily a typical project by any means in that regard, but just wonderful to be able to bring all of those folks together. I saw one question in the chat panel that I had skipped over previously, and Lauren, this might be right up your alley. How did you settle on the color of the art installation poles? That's from Stephanie.
Well, there are, I guess, there's a certain color palette that ACC has. And so we try to work off of that. And I feel like there's some early on photos of when we were first meeting at INR, and we have all these color swatches laid out and are trying to, see which ones would work closely with ACC and still be unique in that gateway color that is really memorable. So
yeah, so they're the purple river bats are purple, and so it sort of started there, and I don't want to say it took on a life of its own. It's still in the purple. It's probably not an exact match to the river bats purple, but that's where it started from, and it's at nighttime. I think it's just magnificent to see that color glowing.
I also wanted to say I'm going to send out the exact addresses for Fontaine Plaza and St. John's, because I noticed that was transcribed before. Thank you. It was missing one number, and they're kind of funny because they have fractions in the addresses.
Oh, fun. Yeah, that's awesome if you could do that, Lauren. I think there are, oh, thanks, Lauren. Got it.
You're welcome.
There are probably a few others we can dig into here. We've got 8 minutes left. Oops, 7 minutes left on this panel. So I know there are a few things that I had in mind, and this is my question to this group. I'm not pulling from the Q&A or chat. I'm cheating. But I am curious, lessons learned for the internal team. I know something for myself, as we got to the end of this project, we've been battling a little bit, or battling is maybe not the right word, but we have realized quite quickly that the Fontaine Plaza has become really attractive to skateboarders, and we love skateboarders. So it's no shade being thrown at them, but we are trying to make sure that what we've given to the park stays intact. And so that's been something that we've been recently sort of struggling with, or trying to figure out how to mitigate for. So, not everything is a perfect picture. So I'd love to hear, Daniel and Lauren, just lessons learned on your end, anything through the process that was a surprise or a challenge that was not anticipated. Curveball, sorry, out of nowhere. Putting you on the spot.
No, time. I mean, when we're presenting an idea like Thicket, the timeline of going from an idea and a Lumion render to finished product and installation, I think was exponentially longer than I ever anticipated. That wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and it was all the right steps, but it certainly was very, I think, revealing in terms of when we pushed the envelope that much. Just being thoughtful on how much time it takes to bring the stakeholders to the table to mock up and fabricate and have these these things built, and then realizing that they weigh 100 pounds and you've got to stuff them in the back of your compact car and they don't fit, and then you've got to drag them across a parking lot into a meeting. I mean, all these like stupid, silly stories about just, wanting to express this. It was, I mean, it was very, very, I think time was really a big lesson learned of how quick a transformation can occur and how long that process will take.
Yeah, right. You're trying to stay on top of it, something that's so fast moving and has some of those pieces did not move quite as fast as others. Yeah, Lauren, any thoughts that you have? Building permit process, perhaps?
Oh, just have enough stamina for that. But I learned that one of the things was that I need to have really durable work boots. That was something that when I was out on Fontaine and we were locating where those actual poles were going, it had rained the night before, so I was almost, knee deep in mud, walking around and having to pull my shoe out to make sure that it would come with me as I moved around. That was quite the experience. And like I said, it was just awesome to see the end results with the poles actually there, because it was definitely a labor of love. So
That's awesome. Well, we all need a good pair of work boots, that's for sure.
Well, Mindy, let me turn the table back on you. I saw that Mark had asked a question about, are there any other dream projects in the area of Austin that you would like to transform, Mindy Cooper?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, yes, there's many of them, and some of them are already hot topics. I think so. The first thing that comes to mind for me is the I-35 corridor, and really looking at restitching. So what used to be East Avenue, restitching East and downtown back together. There's a lot of work happening around the convention center district right now that I think is critical, where the convention center used to be sort of a bookend to downtown, and now it's more of a barrier. And thinking about how those spaces could be revisioned to stitch our city into a more cohesive network is something that I'm super curious about. I believe will happen. It's only a matter of time, but gosh, would love to have a hand in being involved in some of those spaces. What about y'all?
I mean, just because it's I think fresh in our minds, the focus that I had over the years through the Parks Foundation of looking at East Austin and looking at kind of the redistribution or kind of re-equity of where parks are built, and the conversation we've all been having about John Trevino Park and that being a potential really magnificent ecological transformation in East Austin of a floodplain park that in the near future, when we're all going there on a regular basis. I mean, I think that story of liberating underutilized spaces, but really with an emphasis on ecology and landscape and systems is I hope a conversation that just gets bigger and bigger in Austin and in fact, I mean, everywhere, but Austin has the potential to really reclaim leadership of that conversation of being really innovative and thoughtful of how we use landscape.
Cool. Well, we are down to 1 minute. So thanks everyone for sticking with us. I think it's been a really great conversation. I love that there is an active conversation happening. So thanks to everyone who participated, and I hope the rest of your Austin Design Weeks are awesome. Get out there and enjoy it. And I think we've now gotten, let's see, I'm going to send that full address for St. John. So that is on Thomas Hatfield Way. I'm going to put that in the chat box to all of you before you log off. And there you go. So with that, we will leave you all to go about your Wednesdays. Thanks for spending the hour with us. We've enjoyed it.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everyone.